This is Milton Alimadi. I wear very many hats. So some of you know me as a PhD student in history at Harvard University. Some of you know me as publisher of Black Star News, blackstarnews.com, focusing on investigative journalism. Journalism is my passion and my love. History is also my passion and my love. And fighting for justice, that is also my passion and love. So I've been covering this story for 2 years now. It's too long, so I'm going to keep this brief, but thankfully I'm going to be posting links to the articles I've written so far. So many of you who've been following what's going on in University of Michigan, you're familiar with the firing of the coach, the university's first African-American coach, Sharon Moore. He was fired December the 10th, and the university put out a press release saying he was fired for cause for having an inappropriate relationship. And of course, they're referring to his romantic relationship with an employee, one of his underlings, I believe. And subsequently, he was involved in an incident, allegedly unlawfully entered the mistress' home and allegedly first threatened her and then threatened to kill himself, and basically was arrested. So that's that story. And it continuing to unfold. But that is certainly not the biggest story that is going on in the University of Michigan. There's a story that they would not like the public to know much about. And that's the story that I have been writing about. So, and really thank you for the existence of independent journalism. If the world were to rely only on corporate media, we would all be dead sooner rather than later. We all end up dead eventually, but the scandal that is corporate media. So let me talk about this story I've been covering for 2 years now. In the meantime, when you get a chance, Google Dr. Gregory St. Clair, the last name Stclaire, and Cassandra Fameaux. That was his wife, now his ex-wife, and the last name is spelled Fameux. Dr. St. Clair was fired by University of Michigan on February the 28th, 2024. There was no press release. There was no talk of transparency. There was no talk of zero tolerance, which was the case when Coach Moore was fired. No statement has been issued, even though he was fired 22 months ago. He was fired shortly after my third article detailing allegations made by, at that time, his wife, which was that he, Dr. St. Clair, and an alleged accomplice, Dr. Dominique Barberio, a psychiatrist, Dr. St. Clair is an anesthesiologist, had been drugging, literally poisoning. That's how she reported it to the police, as poisoning, and that's how it was investigated, ultimately. Poisoning his wife for 9 years at the university hospital. It was previously Sparrow, and it was acquired by University of Michigan in 2023, I believe. She alleged that Dr. Barberio first wrote a false diagnosis, misdiagnosed her as having schizophrenia and bipolar disorder to pave the way for the illegal drugging with antipsychotic drugs. And what was the alleged motive? To have his wife sign what practically is a postnuptial agreement. The legal term for it was a judgment of separate maintenance, JOSM, which she signed on February the 20th, 2018, during the period she was being allegedly illegally drugged by her husband and Dr. Barberio. From 2014 to 2017, they drugged her with oral medicines, oral antipsychotic. From 2017 to 2021, they injected her with a drug called Invega-Sustina. And from 2021 to 2023, they went back to oral drug called Abilify. Now here's the deal. The injections, monthly injections, and allegedly, and some of this is in the court papers from the divorce case, it even exceeded the maximum amount in terms of the dosage that is actually recommended for people that actually were schizophrenic and have bipolar disorder. Here's the other deal. The medical records from the hospital state that it was Dr. Barberio, the psychiatrist, who was administering these injections to Ms. Cassandra Femiu in his office. And occasionally, one of his two nurses would inject her. But in reality, it was actually her husband himself, Dr. St. Clair, who was injecting his wife in Dr. Barberio's office, in spite of what the medical records say. And they've both admitted to this already. Dr. St. Clair admitted in the divorce trial when he testified, including on December 11, 2024, Dr. Barberio told police when police finally investigated this matter. So I wrote, and so Ms. Femiu alleged that the only time Dr. Barberio ever injected her was when her husband was angry at her and phoned Dr. Barberio, who then went to the marital home to inject her as punishment. And I've discussed this previously before. And Dr. St. Clair kept handwritten notes of these injections. And how do I know those are his handwritten notes? Because it matches with notes that he wrote during his 2003 divorce from his second wife, who was an African American. She was a doctor as well, Dr. Marcy Street. She is deceased now, died reportedly of cancer in 2019. And during that divorce in 2003, in his handwritten notes, he was also complaining and alleging that she also had mental problems. And the handwriting matches with his notes from when Dr. Barberio would allegedly come to inject his wife as punishment. So those are the only times that Dr. Barberio allegedly injected Ms. Femiu. So I wrote these articles. He was fired in February 28. As I said, no statement, February 28, 2024. He ended up filing a defamation lawsuit against me in July 2024. I have lawyers now who have moved to have this case dismissed. And here's the most interesting thing about this. In his lawsuit, he alleged that I falsely reported that he was being investigated by the Licensing Commission, Licensing and Regulation Authority, Michigan. It's called LARA. When in fact, I published a statement, a quote from LARA within that article that he alleged I falsely wrote about. And not only that, an investigator named Norm Namey called me from LARA, and we had a conversation, and he claimed my reporting matched his own independent investigation, and he would send me a subpoena so I could come and testify in any action to make sure that Dr. St. Clair's license would be revoked. He never sent me a subpoena, and then he ended up writing some nonsense report that basically Dr. St. Clair did nothing wrong, which means when he called me and had that conversation, he was fishing for information. So he still has a license because of Norm Namey. And Norm Namey does not know, but I have some other documentation. And that's going to be for another article very shortly. It would be very difficult for him to explain why he did not recommend that Dr. Sinclair's license should be revoked. I'm not going to tip him off yet, but I have the documentation, and that's going to be in one of my next articles. So the point is, investigative journalism, independent journalism, must never die, because otherwise nobody would know about this story. He would probably still be working at the hospital today had I not written these articles. You see? But it gets worse. Let me tell you what happened. Ultimately, Cassandra, now she had sobered up significantly. Her mind was clear. She was no longer married, living in the marital house, had her own apartment, and was seeing an independent psychiatrist and an independent social worker. And by the way, 2 psychiatrists subsequently have said she is not schizophrenic and does not have bipolar disorder. And you know, schizophrenia has no cure, which means if she doesn't have it now, she did not have it when she was being allegedly falsely medicated, falsely drugged by her husband and Dr. Barberio between 2014 to 2023. So anyway, she was accompanied by a social worker from Community Mental Health, which is a state entity in Lansing, Michigan. And her name is Linda Wenzel, who accompanied Cassandra to the Meridian County Police, and she reported the same allegations about her husband and Dr. Barberio poisoning her all these years. Dr. Sinclair refused to be interviewed by the police. Dr. Barberio was interviewed by the police, and he told them that it was Dr. Sinclair who was injecting his wife in his office. He also, in the deposition for the divorce case, said Dr. Sinclair administered 90% of the injections in his office, that he never injected Ms. Cassandra Famio even once. So the police also got transcripts from the divorce case. And I'll tell you just a few points from that transcript. Number one, Dr. Sinclair alleged that the reason why he injected his wife was because she asked him to inject him because it would not hurt as much. So he's still alleging that, she is schizophrenic, so she needs to be injected, and she happened to ask me to do it because I'm an anesthesiologist, I know how to do it, and it didn't hurt that much. And he claimed in his testimony in the divorce case that she made that statement in the presence of Dr. Barberio. When the police asked Dr. Barberio if that was true, he said no. He never heard such a statement made in front of him. So that's, how do you call this? Untruth, number one. Untruth, number two. Dr. Sinclair, in his testimony in the divorce case, claimed that he only injected his wife occasionally, when Dr. Barberio is telling us 90% of the time. And that the rest of the times the injections were administered by Dr. Barberio and his nurses. Obviously, Dr. Barberio was not in court, and that's why he was able to say that. So basically, that was false, because Dr. Barberio never injected Ms. Sinclair in his office. So that's perjury. I brought this up in one of my articles, but the judge, it gets worse. The judge who presided over the divorce case, Carol Koenig, in Ingham County's 30th Judicial Circuit Court, ignored that perjured statement. But that is minor compared to what the judge herself ended up doing. So I'll get to that. So finally, on April the 10th, 2025, the Meridian County Police made a recommendation that Dr. Sinclair should be arrested and criminally charged with domestic assault based on the allegations made by his wife. And let me get this out of the way. I don't want to forget this part. The side effects of the legal drugging, allegedly: diabetes, brain tumor, a heart condition. She has a loop monitor inserted in her chest, and she was having excessive monthly bleeding during her monthly cycles. So she had to have surgery, and that surgery left her infertile. And also, before I forget this, the links below have the articles that I am discussing now, but there's also a petition, and I'll tell you the reason for that petition. The police made the recommendation to the Ingham County prosecutor, his name is John DeWayne, to criminally charge Dr. St. Clair. But guess what? He refused. So Dr. St. Clair is getting the same kind of protection and coverage that he got while he was at the University of Michigan. But ultimately, they had to fire him because there was no way could he deny what I had been reporting. And as I just said, even though he ended up filing the lawsuit, he's basically admitted to everything that I had been reporting. So John DeWayne, the prosecutor, refused to charge Dr. St. Clair. The petition is asking him to do the right thing and charge Dr. St. Clair based on the recommendation of the police. The petition is also asking that the Governor Whitmer, appoint a special prosecutor to review all the issues if John DeWayne, for whatever reason, does not want to charge Dr. St. Clair. Here is John DeWayne's number: 517-483-6108. It is also on the petition. And if you find this presentation convincing enough, call him and ask him to explain to you why he's rejecting a recommendation from the police. He's not saying he did his own investigation and, it counters what the police said. No, he did not even interview Cassandra Femil. She did not even know that he had decided not to prosecute Dr. St. Clair until I reported it. So call that number and also send him an email: prosecutorsoffice@ingham.org. Prosecutors, of course, with an S. So it's PROSECUTORS, office, you know how to spell office, at ingham.org, INGHAM.org. And as I said, this information is also at the petition, and the link will be below. All right, so let me go to, I don't want to keep this too long because I'm going to continue covering this story. So that judgment of separate maintenance basically transferred 100% of marital assets to Dr. St. Clair. There are 2 homes, millions of dollars. It also gave me an advantage in child custody. At that time in 2018, all their 3 children were minors at the time. How did he get advantage? Because the agreement named Dr. Barberio as the psychiatrist who would determine Ms. Femil's mental fitness to co-parent. So during the divorce, one of the lawyers who represented Cassandra filed a motion October 22, 2024. His name was Timothy Young, saying this JOSM should be set aside. It was obtained fraudulently because his client was being drugged when she signed it. She didn't know what she was doing. The Judge Koenig, denied that motion. Cassandra accused her of racial animus and filed a motion for her to recuse herself. She refused, and she sealed that motion. Cassandra, by the way, also filed a grievance complaint with the Michigan Judicial Tenure Commission, right? So she rejected that. But guess what? It turns out that agreement was actually void. Why is that? Because in 2015, Cassandra had been adjudged as incompetent. So in order for her to be able to sign, and of course she says that being determined as somebody who was incompetent in 2015 was because, of course, she was being illegally drugged at that time by Dr. St. Clair and Dr. Barberio. So anyway, the court was required to appoint a guardian ad litem for her before she could sign an agreement such as the judgment of separate maintenance. Guess what? No guardian ad litem was appointed. An attorney guardian ad litem is different, and that's what they appointed. An attorney guardian ad litem takes care of the interest of the minor children in the divorce case like this. But for Cassandra, they were supposed to have appointed a guardian ad litem. They never did that. Problem. It means now Judge Koenig has to set aside this agreement. And at worst, assets should be split, whether 50-50 or whatever, right? Wrong. The judge came up with her own solution. She fabricated a guardian ad litem. I kid you not. So obviously I wrote an article about it, and it's in one of the links below. She fabricated the guardian ad litem in order to support her wrongful decision to uphold that agreement. She upheld the agreement. She issued the final divorce decree. Dr. St. Clair goes off without being prosecuted. He goes off with all the marital assets, 100%. And Cassandra Famiu leaves this marriage with the brain tumor, with the heart condition, diabetes, infertility, and zero of the marital assets. That's where things stand today. Obviously, there are many open ends, and I will continue reporting this case. And I will keep all of you posted. And I won't tell you how the judge fabricated the guardian ad litem, because I want you to read it in one of the articles. It's the last article that I've written so far about this case. I will end on this note. This is what Cassandra said. Milton, I'm being treated as if this was Alabama in the 1950s. Stay tuned, sisters and brothers.